Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third episode of Shot of Nostalgia right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern. You know what it is, it's Friday night, but we are not in Friday night, it is Saturday night's main event. I'm good old Mike Belcaster, and joining me is the host with the most, brother.
Live from No Cell Studios to the ACEFIELD Tavern, ACEFIELD Retro, and we're here reviewing Saturday night's main event, our third iteration of what is going to be a blockbuster season, 18 episodes in total. We are in the third one, as we mentioned, so we are reliving the time that NBC became a pivotal point of the WWF, and the growth of WWF is immense from 1985 until when we're going to stop this. So it's going to be a great time watching the growth, going through the newsletters. But Mike Belcaster, dude, fresh off that trip, you live local, but I mean, Chicago traffic is a bitch. So
yeah.
I hear all out weekend. I mean, dude, some good stuff going on for AEW.
Dude, and awesome weekend, first off. Beautiful shows. A lot of shit going down. You know it. We all know it. Let's escape the elephant in the room like we should, because it's a little too much. You know, I'm done with the drama. We're here. I wanted to talk about how awesome it was that, you know, our Shot of Nostalgia always comes full circle. We get to cover some Ricky the Dragon Steamboat here, and we got to see some Ricky the Dragon Steamboat this week, man. How awesome is it that, you know, we're here in 2023 and we're going 86. The Dragon's sitting here calling out Jake the Snake on our screens. It's fucking insane, dude.
Yeah, so we're not going to get Ricky Steamboat in a strap match or even teased here. We're going to get him in the ring, but you're right. I think it's poetic that we eventually see some tie-in. Saturday night's main event is so influential in what wrestling culture became, and thank you guys so much for the great feedback for the first two episodes. I mean, people have been really enjoying what we're doing here. And I think it strikes a chord with people in a good way with Saturday night's main event. There's a lot of nostalgia that's tied to it. And there's also people that haven't dove deep into the catalog of it, like similar here. We talked about Terry Funk versus Hulk Hogan last week. And that's a match that you knew happened, but didn't really dive in. And I think people are so used to that time period being WrestleMania, maybe SummerSlam based, that they haven't really got into the matches on the cards here. It's not about work rate, but there's some hidden gems, as we'll see this week. Yeah,
no, it's stacked up. I'm super enjoying the content here because it's a nice change of pace from what we're living with right now with pro wrestling. Like, it's a little slowed down. You're easier to follow. It's not so hyped up. It's not spots after spots. It's just storytelling in the most simplistic but very, very captivating way.
So today we're going to be reviewing two events, Saturday night's main event 5 from March 1st, 1986 from Phoenix, Arizona, headlined by Hulk Hogan versus the Magnificent Muraco for the WWF Championship. And we're going to finish it off with Saturday night's main event 6 from May 3rd, 1986 from Providence, Rhode Island, headlined by the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid, defending their tag titles against Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik. Both of them have Captain Lou Albano in their corner and also Classy Freddie Blassie. And this will be a 2 out of 3 falls match for the tag team championship, as I mentioned. So two really awesome episodes, as you mentioned. They go super fast watching them. And I'm so used to packing in last season. Smoky Mountain Wrestling was hours and hours of content we had to consume and go through the house shows and everything. And this is a nice little sandwich here. We have the pretty much go-home edition of Saturday night's main event for WrestleMania 2, previewing it, getting ready for that big King Kong Bundy versus Hulk Hogan championship match. And then we have, just a month or change later, Saturday night's main event 6, in Providence, Rhode Island, is kind of dealing with the fallout of everything that went down there and setting the stage for what's going to be happening possibly at WrestleMania 3. So a lot of good stuff on the table.
Yeah, it's crazy how the buildup is. Like, we go through the build to WrestleMania 2, and then it goes right into that build to WrestleMania 3. You're feeling it. You're kind of getting what all the planning is. You're getting ready to tell the story for the next year. I think that's where this mentality came from, booking those pay-per-views like that, booking, a year out in advance to try to get people to want to buy into it. It's amazing to watch, man.
Yeah, year-long booking is definitely a lost art. We see it now with the Bloodline, but it's more of a resurgence or a renaissance of it. It's not the typical thing, but back in the day, I mean, what you talk to fans that used to watch WWF or even WCW back in the day, you would have year-long feuds. The payoff would happen 365 days later, planting seeds for the tree that would be the next year's WrestleMania. And there's so much stuff you can go back and allude to. There's like, the Mega Powers in 1989. That is a huge piece of the lore that happened, planting seeds right on Saturday night's main event. And we're going to definitely cover those. But even WrestleMania 3, you kind of knew that they're heading towards Hogan Andre WrestleMania 3. It seemed inevitable. And there's some good stories about Andre in the newsletter that people weren't even aware that was going on because it was happening in Japan. So it might as well not happened anywhere because news definitely did not travel as fast as it does today. But point being, man, this is a enormously fun season of Shot Nostalgia because it's content that feels like it should be kind of, you've seen it a lot, but I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen any of this until this is fresh eyes watching a product that I've been consuming my whole life. So this is just like something I always skipped over, never watched it in full.
Yeah, no, it's very awesome, man. I mean, we even get to see Hogan donning the first red and yellow, I believe, since we started this. It's insane, man.
So let's get into the happy hour. We're going to be talking about the build. So it's going to be the build to WrestleMania and then the fallout. So we're going to deal with a little bit of the conversation there. So let's get into the happy hour and have Meltzer take us back to March 17th of 1986.
Happy hour.
Poor Dusty. He's crying himself a river over some real glass.
I was going to make a joke too. I heard you slapping glass over there or pinging it over here, but only real glass at the tavern here. That might be a shirt, brother. Like, how do we only use real glass, no plastic cups here. March 17th, 1986. Meltzer says, as I write this, which is on 3/5/86, I do know that William Refrigerator Perry is definitely at WrestleMania in a battle royal from Chicago. He continues, I was told that Perry, Jimbo Covert, an all-pro offensive lineman with the Bears, Harvey Martin, recently retired lineman who played for the Cowboys, and Ed Too Tall Jones, a 6'9" defensive lineman with the Cowboys, would be in a battle royal, and Jones' name has been confirmed by a number of sources. So they had a press conference, which we'll talk about in a second. The collaboration with the NFL and WWF at the time, WWE now, is a relationship that, we even saw the news. They have a licensing agreement with these championship belts. It goes a very long way. NFL is a media mogul. The entity is beyond belief. It is a huge, it's the biggest entertainment value in all of the world right now. And I think even here, attaching themselves in a way to the NFL, which was it was a professional sports league, still popular, not to the level it is now, but neither is WWF at the time. So this is the perfect relationship, and both leagues' promotions are on the rise.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of context to it. I mean, 85 Bears was probably one of the best years for the Bears. So striking while the iron's hot. I mean, we're coming off of Walter Payton, obviously the Refrigerator. It's cool to see them kind of pulling that star power, because the 85 Bears is like, that's legendary stuff in Chicagoland. So Vince knew what he was getting into and what he was doing, and he did it very, very well, I believe.
Yeah, hometown stuff with the sports usually works, and we're going to see this NFL thing crop up throughout WrestleMania lore. I mean, you go back to WrestleMania 11, where Lawrence Taylor main evented a WrestleMania. And you can't take that away. And the NFL stuff has been, they litter it on Raw. They always love the local team sitting at ringside. And, football players turned into wrestlers is something that is possible. I mean, we've seen a lot of that where the athletic prowess of an NFL player and the sports entertainment world or pro wrestling has a lot of similarities.
100%.
So Meltzer says, I know Titan held a presser on March 4th in LA to announce the NFL Battle Royal that we're referencing. And he says, I was told all four of these names, but the conference didn't get much coverage, so I have no idea what was announced. Which is hilarious because news travels so fast. We were talking about 2023 where something happens and we hear about it immediately. A press conference used to be so important, and they still do pressers, it's still very important to the process. But as we know, you could drop a statement in a form of a letter, in a PDF form, put it on your social media. That travels faster than what's happening here. But just because no one saw it, he was like, no one covered it, so it doesn't get any traction. And I guess the information is just lost on everybody.
Yeah, it was no media scrum. Right?
Yeah. So Meltzer goes through the specifics about who's getting paid here, and he says it's been reported in the media that Perry will receive $150,000 for his appearance and probably winning the Battle Royal. And he says, I do know what the reported figure is definitely correct. And he put in parentheses, that's what he's been promised, not necessarily what he will get. As I recall, aside from Hogan, I'm not certain about. All the main eventers in the last year's Mania got a lot less than they expected and were pretty pissed off. If you recall, Mr. T and Piper did some shopping around with other promoters. So we'll talk about more stuff coming up for WrestleMania 2. There was a lot in the newsletter about Mr. T. We covered it last week, talking about how he was upset with the pay that he got and wanted more. And you can't really blame him, too, because WrestleMania was built on the back of celebrity. Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T, they were very important pieces. And it's hard to say, and I would probably venture to say most people would agree with this, that WrestleMania would not have succeeded if not for someone like Mr. T being in the main event. They needed that Hollywood push to get the event over the top, because there's been wrestling events, hundreds of thousands at this point before this. They needed something different to take them to the next level, and it was celebrity, and Mr. T was as hot as it gets in 1985.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, you got the A-team out there. I mean, he's all over the place. He's rightfully so to be pissed off about getting gypped on a payday. I wouldn't put it past Piper either to be kind of shopping around, seeing what's going on. So this is very interesting. Very, very interesting read.
The other thing that's interesting is obviously WrestleMania 40 tickets have gone on sale, and there's been some discussion among fans about how expensive they are and waiting on secondary to buy them, but they've only gone up. So if you're planning on being in Philly, it's going to be a hefty on the wallet. But hearing it about the tickets here, and of course 1986 is much different than 2023 with inflation, but listen to these prices. Mike Belcaster, he said ringside tickets at all three arenas are $100. Although they're up to $30 starting 6th row ringside. And he said, I know a lot of people are thinking this show won't do as well as the last one, but I'm certain it will do better. For one, McMahon is running live events in the three biggest markets in the country, ensuring tons of media coverage. He also has William Refrigerator Perry, who is as hot an item as Mr. T was last year. And the audience saw two fearsome fighters looking for revenge. All right, let's start with the tickets there. I did look up the Philadelphia tickets right now, ringside. Any guesses how much they cost in Philadelphia?
Is it somewhere like around the 15,000 mark, right?
Just about, yeah. So like secondary has them at 15. They were listing them at 10. So if you wanted to buy them straight from WWE or Ticketmaster or whatever it was, $10,000. So for $100, you can't even get in the building. I think the average ticket, even for the nosebleed seats at the Link, it's, close to $250, $230, something like that right now. And maybe that will change. Maybe time will kind of tell. There's a lot of tickets to be sold. Place will be sold out both nights. Obviously, 45,000 each night, 90,000 in total. But yeah, I would say looking at the price here, even with inflation, I'm not even going to use the calculator. Wrestling is at a different point right now. And WrestleMania at 40, 38 years later, it's expensive to get in the building and sit ringside. I mean, they didn't know what they had at Nassau Coliseum. I don't know the arena for the LA where they were playing. I think it was not the original Lakers arena that they played in, then obviously in Chicago. So 3 different arenas, and they're selling for a price at $100. To be at ringside is unbelievable.
No, absolutely. It's crazy to think if you're talking one night for those tickets too for this year's WrestleMania, right? So exactly. So if it's $20,000 basically to sit ringside for the 2-day spectacle that it's became, but $100 being on floor seats is insane to think about today. Like I've bought in tickets for AEW shows where it's like $400 to get sit like second, third row. So it's insane to see, man.
So the 3 different arenas, just to clarify, the Rosemont Horizon, which is a building we're very familiar with, and for LA, it's the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena, which is no longer there. It was where the Lakers did play, and Major League Soccer at Los Angeles FC. The arena is now gone, replaced by more beautiful facilities. But 3 different arenas, 40,085 confirmed in all 3 cities. It was a concept that a lot of people look back not with fond eyes about the 3 different arenas and having to watch a third of the card on a screen. But it was an interesting idea to bring all the cities together, the 3 biggest wrestling markets together. I like what it is in concept, but Belcaster, it was never going to work. You're paying a lot of money to sit in an arena and watch on the screen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I do believe that there was some other markets, like I think they were showing it in movie theaters for the first time.
For sure, closed circuit type of stuff. Yep.
Yeah, which was an innovative move on WWE's part, to Vince McMahon's part, and even if you're paying $100, I would pay $100 to sit, watch 3 matches, and the rest of it on a screen would be pretty interesting these days.
So the other piece that he talked about here is obviously the celebrity of William Perry, and you referenced it before, the 1985 Bears, Super Bowl champions. They are a hot commodity, and dipping into the celebrity world, who more of a celebrity than championship-winning football player? But the other stuff is the meaningful stories, and really what he was referencing is the 2 fearsome fighters looking for revenge. Mr. T and Hulk Hogan. They were paired up in the first WrestleMania in a tag match. Not a lot of heat on that card as far as buildup goes. It was just come see the stars.
Yeah.
This one has a lot more meat on it, as we will see in this episode, where Hulk Hogan has to overcome the odds, and so does Mr. T. He was kind of, and we'll cover the boxing match the bastardization of a boxing match that we saw, but also Hulk Hogan taken out on a stretcher, hospitalized from King Kong Bundy. Both these guys who are strong, athletic, superhuman people are going into this WrestleMania event kind of hurting, and I think wrestling fans are looking for them to get their revenge, and I think that's what Meltzer's referencing here. I think it should be very interesting to see them both coming in from underneath.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a strange concept to see, like Hogan hurting. You don't want to see Hulk. You don't want to see the Hulkster brother sitting on a gurney, freaking out. All those little Hulkamaniacs out there crying, watching those shows.
So in addition, because of how well the first one went over, Meltzer says this Mania is virtually guaranteed success. And not a lot of people agreed with that, but he does use reference of history to support himself. And he says, if you recall, Crockett's second and third Starrcade shows did record gates, even though they really did not have strong lineups, but the quality of the first year sold the second year's event and helped the third. He continues, last year the event had to be established. This year many wrestling fans are looking at it as, get this, the Super Bowl, which draws no matter what teams are involved. So even in 1986, the second iteration, the sequel is still being looked at as the championship match, the Super Bowl, the World Series, whatever you want to say, whatever example you want to use, is the biggest event of the year for pro wrestling. And we hear that term being tossed around now. It's the Super Bowl of the WWE professional wrestling. But the concept here, seeing it in black and white, Meltzer was on something. He knew that this was going to be a success.
Yeah, and the mentality of, it's people are looking forward to it no matter who's booked. That sounds really familiar on the AEW side as well. I mean, we didn't know, more than 3 matches going into this week for All Out, and by the time we hit Saturday, everything was a lot more filled out, but the tickets were already sold, man. People were already ready, looking forward to going to the show no matter what the hell the card looked like, because they're just looking for a good time, a good night of pro wrestling.
Yeah, we watch all those tickets be sold for WrestleMania 40, and nobody knows what's in the main event. We can assume it's going to be Roman versus Cody, but there's no guarantee. Someone could get hurt, they could change their plans, it may be something completely different, and you're still paying over 10 grand to sit ringside. So I think you're right. Even nowadays, where people are so quick, and I understand it's the reactionary nature of 2023, typing on X or putting on Instagram how much they hate the product or the lack of build, and Tony Khan referenced that and saying that he ignores it. But I think at the end of the day, the event is what sells. We saw that with All In. The pageantry of 80,000+ people in an arena, Wembley Stadium sold it. It didn't matter what matches there. Of course it does for longevity and for history, but to get people in the door for an immediate to make a profit, it may not matter as much as we all imagine. Like, because we're looking for blood feuds. We're looking for the Heavenly Bodies versus the Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah.
We're looking for someone to break Dusty's leg. And we want those meaningful stories to get you in the arena. But sometimes it's the spectacle itself. And WrestleMania is a perfect example of it.
100%.
So he continues, I saw most of the 3-1 Saturday night's main event show, but missed the Slammies, which I am told were uneventful. He says, as usual, the show was well-paced and well put together. All of the announcers, including Jesse, were quite overbearing. He uses the word shit here, which is the first time I ever heard Meltzer curse in the newsletter. He said the matches were shit, but that's expected aside from the Kid and Smith versus Beefcake and Valentine match. We'll talk about that match in a sec, about really the injuries that has been going on with Dynamite Kid. They reference it during this, but very fascinating that he is very worn out and he is very hurt to a serious extent. And we know how serious his body kind of breaks down on him at the end of it, at the end of his life, pretty much. He's in a wheelchair. So even back then, he's pushing through injuries that a lot of men probably should have taken months off.
No, 100%. And that was a huge problem. I mean, even going in the 90s with wrestling, there was not enough time to recuperate, not enough time to take care of your body. And it really hindered a lot of careers and took the wind out of the sails for a lot of wrestlers, because they were just injury prone after a certain extent, and there was nothing you could do about it. There's probably a handful that made it into the late 90s, 2000s era. It's crazy.
So we also have him referencing this boxing match, and I think overall it went a minute as far as in-ring action, but there was a lot of conversation at this time in the newsletter about Bob Orton being blown up during this match, and he said Orton did a great job in his match, and I don't blame him for blowing up because I've goofed around with the gloves on, and if you're not a fighter, you'll get tired fast. And he says still they gave him ample time to rest, and you think they'd let him visit the WWF pharmacy before having him unveil his relatively small and flat physique. Got a tough words here, especially it doesn't age well for sure. One of those things where I'm sure he would want that one back, Belcaster. But anyone that's ever had to do cardio, and especially if you've ever used like a punching bag with gloves on, it is exhausting. And so watching this, I mean, we'll talk about the match, but I didn't honestly think, I thought Bob Orton was kind of selling a little bit. He's a guy that is supposed to be a heel, and he does cheat. And part of the thing is that they want Mr. T to look like this, like, really well-trained endurance athlete, and the way you make him look like an endurance athlete is to show the other guys not. And I thought that was what I took it away from, but allegedly he was very blown up and it was a big deal.
Yeah, it kind of looked like it, but also I fall with you on maybe he was selling. Maybe he was just trying to make Mr. T look that much better, that much stronger, that much faster. Yeah, interesting.
So Meltzer said, we'll try and get the ratings in the next issue, but I assume with all the plugging they did on the syndicated show and the appearance of Mr. T in the boxing match, that they beat their previous best in the January show, which would make this the most watched show in that time slot for more than 5 years. So NBC is a big hit right now. The relationship that was unsteady was in question. They weren't knowing if they were going to get a renewal for the product. That seems to be a thing of the past. And the thing that he does reference here, and it's interesting because he talks about the comedy and this type of variety show mentality when you're putting this together. And he says, if you notice the comedy was limited to just token amounts, I'm of the impression that after the strong January showing, which was very wrestling based, McMahon feels a whole lot more secure about the future of the network specials. Thus, he doesn't have to cater those in power who want more comedy. Also, since the show's purpose was to get the Mania angles over, doing comedy would have hurt. So this kind of makes sense too, where if you look at a non-wrestling fan, what draws you in is the Uncle Elmore wedding. It's the goofy Halloween stuff that will get people to kind of tune in and see how exaggerated and silly it is. But really, I think they're losing the insecurity of that. Oh, wrestling can actually draw. We can have the British Bulldogs out there, and people are going to tune in and watch. That's eventually going to be the draw, not these side goofy plots on the side. And Vince is seeing that, and I think once he gains the confidence under him that pro wrestling or sports entertainment is what's selling, not the other side stuff, and trying to sneak the wrestling in, I think it becomes a little bit more of a wrestling show, which is why they hit their stride and it becomes a little bit more watchable.
Yeah, no, it's very noticeable too. You could tell they kind of moved away from the Georgia Animal Steel at the zoo kind of stuff and went more into very in-ring action, work rate matches. I mean, we kind of see a little bit more of that here compared to what we were used to for this time frame for WWF.
So go to the May 12th, 1986 newsletter. This is some big news here. And another interesting bit of news, according to Meltzer, the WWF made some personnel changes. And he said, in what I'd considered a major bombshell as recently as a few weeks ago back, I think nothing of it. And he says, Harley Race has joined forces, having appeared on the May 5th TV taping in Toronto. I have a pretty good idea why this happened, which is why I'm not surprised. Race and Bob Geigel had a falling out, and there are a few other reasons as well. And he also talks about, I'm really curious to see how WWF tries to use Harley Race, as no doubt he's still a very good worker, but he's hardly marketable in today's pro wrestling environment. So Harley Race, I mean, legend.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you're not stuck in the WWF, WWE Fed brain bubble, Harley Race's contributions to the business are endless. He's trained people, his feud with Ric Flair, everything that happened prior to the run here. And I think presentation-wise, Harley Race left a lot to be desired on the WWF side. And that's not his fault. He came in, and his most meaningful stuff was silly. They never really strapped the rocket to him. There was a couple times they made him look like a badass. If you watch him on some of these, I mean, we're going to see him on some Saturday Night's Main Events. There's some times where Harley Race is presented like a real badass. But I don't think they ever presented him as the real-life tough guy he could have been. A crazy, awesome heel that could have been involved with Hulk Hogan. It just wasn't there. And par for the course here, finding whatever was working elsewhere, collecting this toy, Junkyard Dog, and Harley Race joins the group of these guys that could have been something huge in WWF.
Yeah, I mean, it's a story that continues to the rest of the time. I mean, with Ric Flairs and I mean even Cody Rhodes, it's just one of those things. It's he always bring him in. I mean, Cody done obviously much better than the latter, but I mean, Ric Flair never got that match with Hogan. It's insane.
Yeah, and I feel like there's an insecurity on Vince or WWE's end to just these are guys made outside of the, and AJ Styles is an example of someone made outside a product that was made and he was pushed. But sometimes I think there is this lack of desire to push a product that was elsewhere. That, I mean, point in case is Sting when he finally came in.
Yeah.
That type of stuff where a legend that was made elsewhere, not in the WWE machine. I think when WCW disappeared and they were bought out in 2001, I think there was a little bit more of this. Once they got past like bringing guys in to pretty much bury them, and although they'll say they didn't, they were more likely to push guys if it made them money. Like Goldberg, his first run, they wanted to expose him, but as later time went on, he was pushed pretty strong. And he's not a WWE guy; he's a product of WCW, obviously. And I guess they see the bigger picture. But we also have some other personnel changes. Ken Resnick, the interview voice of AWA, will be coming in as well. Supposedly, Resnick will do the same job with Titan as he did with AWA, which means Mean Gene will lose some airtime. Meltzer continues. It's no secret that many in Titan agreed with my comments about Okerlund's inability to ever get serious things over is hurting some of the local promos, specifically with the pre-Hogan and Bundy WrestleMania 2 hype. He says Gene will still be around, obviously. I suspect when comedies need, they'll use him to get some NBC exposure. So it never really happens when Ken Resnick's Mean Gene is still a big piece, but he's not doing play-by-play. He becomes a backstage interview guy in a lot of ways. And not really sure about Ken Resnick's AWA career, but I just know that his time is not as meaningful as they probably thought here. I mean, Ken Resnick is a guy that, when signed, I mean, put in the same breath as Harley Race as a signing and kind of taken away from AWA. That's a big deal.
Yeah, huge deal. Kid got himself over, right?
So according to his Wikipedia page, following his departure from AWA, Resnick planned on returning to Chrysler. However, his friend Blackjack Lanza convinced him to interview for a job with the WWF. Resnick joined the WWF on May 1st. His final TV appearance as an announcer was on March 14th, 1987, on an episode of Wrestling Challenge. So he eventually started to do more things. He served as a Ladies Professional Wrestling Association announcer during the early 1990s. He was involved in the American Wrestling Federation in 1986. And as recently as 2018, he became the announcer for Ring Warriors, which is a promotion that airs in your neck of the woods, WGN America, and Amazon Prime. So, didn't work out the way they did. It wasn't Gordon Sully jumping ship or Jim Ross. This was like a guy they probably looked at as, hell yeah, let's get Ken Resnick in. He's an AWA voice. Let's get the product over. And if you're not familiar with the name, that's why. He was there for a short cup of coffee, sipped on it, and then left and without paying the bill.
Crazy.
So we also have some other things to talk about as far as personnel. Uncle Elmer was fired shortly after the NBC taping in that horrible match with King Kong Bundy. He couldn't work and was getting on everybody's nerves as well. In fact, several guys just about had it with him. Meltzer continues, besides, he'd more than outlived his usefulness. And Cousin Luke will be returning as Hillbilly Jim's partner. And Meltzer says, I believe that because of his contract, he would have signed that if Stan Frazier were to wrestle elsewhere, that he couldn't use the name Uncle Elmer, which is only fair. Titan certainly created that character. So the one side plot I pulled from this is that wasn't commonplace because there wasn't a lot of competitors going and taking different names. This is the first time you mentioned sort of creative control over characters and gimmicks where, I mean, not that Uncle Elmer is going to get over elsewhere, like you're going to go independent locally, but just the concept here that Meltzer was saying, you couldn't use the name, and that's fair because WWF created the character. That is part of what WWF created, this lore of you can only be this character. You can only be Zack Ryder in WWE, not anywhere else. You can be Matt Cardona. You can do some of the similar taunts, but you have to be him here. So this is a kind of a precursor to what's to come.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And, they really held it down for themselves on character control.
So a story here, I mentioned the story about Andre the Giant, and Andre was making bookings over in Japan in between his WWF showings, and this was an interesting one that I pulled up on, and this is kind of worst case scenario for anyone that's booking Andre at this time. It says another strange story comes from Japan revolving around a match on 4/29 ensued between Andre the Giant and Akira Maeda. Basically, Andre wouldn't wrestle. The match disintegrated, and Andre just laid on his back and would not get up. Meltzer continues, Andre would not sell any submissions or get to his feet. Inoki, Fujinami, and many other Japanese wrestlers came to ringside telling Maeda to fight Andre. Andre never got up, and the match was stopped at 26 minutes and 35 seconds.
Wow.
So this match is like they were trying their best to make it work. There's really no clarity about what was going on with Andre. People weren't sure, and we'll talk about it in a second, if he either just refused to perform, was not feeling well. was maybe inebriated.
Yeah.
Was another piece of it. And yeah, there was a whole bunch of conversation in this newsletter that got completely retracted because they were like, oh, he'll never make another appearance. This is the end of the relationship with New Japan, and he'll return in May. You know what I mean? Like he was back because they were able to make their differences, and he was working guys that were involved in this segment too. So pretty big deal. But Andre, as we continue to see, gets a pass more so than a lot of people in wrestling would have gotten. Like, he's not signing a contract with WWF. He's working as an independent contractor. And then same thing here. He fucks up and doesn't do what he's supposed to do. Oh, well, Andre's still coming back. He's Andre the Giant.
Absolutely. 26 minutes, of laying around in the ring, though. That's got to be brutal to watch. I want to go find that tape somewhere.
So Meltzer says many expect Andre, who makes more than $10,000 a week in Japan, but has virtually no box office left, will be used sparingly. However, Andre did appear on the 5-1 show in Tokyo, caused no problems. During the last minutes of the Maeda match, Maeda kicked him while he was laying on the mat motionless. And Andre is coming back to IWGP tournament and will be putting over Inoki. Andre was definitely not injured by Maeda. He either, this is according to Meltzer, A, refused to perform, B, blew up of having to actually move, or C, was in no condition to get in the ring that night. His bouts in the IWGP should be awful. So that was, and this is also too, I wanted to put this in here, not to, burst the bubble of what people think about Andre Giant, because I'm a big fan of him, is to set the stage for what WrestleMania 3 is, because everyone believes that Andre, if you're watching this, that he is still the biggest, baddest guy on earth. Yeah. But the public perception of him in the world of wrestling, you saw it here. I mean, this was Meltzer said virtually no box office left. And WWF said that, and we're like, you know what? Watch this. And let's go to the Pontiac Silverdome and change that perception. It just shows how big the machine became so fast, and they could take anything and rewrite history. They were talking about, can Hogan slam Andre? Well, yeah, he did at Shea Stadium 4 years prior, but let's pretend it didn't happen anyway.
And Harley Race has done it, and millions others, or a handful of people have done it before too. But it's typical WWF
revisionist history, and like we know, history books are written by the winners, but it's insane. They'll do stuff right in front of you. You can go on YouTube right now and find Andre being slammed by multiple people on any given night. I think it was a spot they did in Japan on a weekly basis.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy.
So it's just insane that everyone believes that. And if you ask someone, when was the first time Andre was slammed, or what's the highlight of WrestleMania 3, it's Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant.
Yeah, it is, but it is one of those things that like kind of lived forever for the WWF, fan camp. Like you think it's in the intro still to this day. They show, it's the lore of it spoke louder than the truth, and it's crazy.
It's also funny to me because we think about worst case scenario WrestleMania 3, where Hogan always talks about the match with Andre and him not knowing what was going to happen. And you hear Hogan, who knows if Hogan's telling the truth now, because he's like on Joe Rogan lying about stuff that never happened. He was in Japan and USA at one point, and he invented a lot of things. He invented the Canadian Destroyer. Did you know that?
Yeah. But, brother.
There's a lot to be said about worst case scenario is if Andre refuses to do business and doesn't want to do what you're doing, or just wasn't capable, there's a chance in Detroit that night on the Pontiac Silverdome where he would have laid on the mat. Can you imagine, would that have killed WWF at the time if that main event didn't deliver? Because if he didn't put Hogan over, like, what are we looking at?
Yeah. It would have been very... I would have not minded to see Andre flip the switch and not go... Or to go into business for himself and see how that would have worked out, but it's just poetic the way it did happen. Everything, all the stars aligned. Andre was capable. Hogan was, the emotions were there. It was storytelling 101,
So WWF aired another Saturday main event broadcast on 5/3, and Meltzer says, I always have mixed feelings about these shows, especially when I see such an incredible individual effort in the ring, like Terry Funk and Adrian Adonis, who had a damn good match against less than wrestlers of their opposition. He says the production of these shows is great, and the shows are so slick and well done, it blows everything else in wrestling away. The only real complaint I have is in the announcement is terrible. So he is stuck on the announcers not being great. I referenced the Dynamite Kid injuries that he was working with. Meltzer says he has no business being out there because he has torn ligaments in his right knee, not his left knee, as McMahon has said. And Davey Boy Smith was in a position of having to work that kind of match with guys who can't do spots. So we'll see this, but knowing how injured Dynamite Kid is and seeing him work through the pain,
man, No, Vince is just rewriting the lore. It was it was the right knee, not the left knee.
Let's get our fix. Let's talk about Saturday night's main event number 5 from Phoenix, Arizona, Veterans Memorial Coliseum, taped all the way back on February 15th, 1986. But let's get our fix.
Get your fix.
Yeah,
Here we are, Phoenix, Arizona, the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, taped on 2/15/1986. Our current WWE champions are as followed. The WWF champion is Hulk Hogan. He won it back on January 23rd, 1984. The Intercontinental champion is Randy Savage. He won it back on 2/8/1986. Our tag team champions are Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. They won it back on 8/24/1985. And our women's champion, Fabulous Moolah, 11/25/1985. And man, we lead right into the show, and I love the presentation. Saturday night is a fun night for wrestling. We see Collision kind of carrying that torch right now. It's fun, not the same time slot, but you feel like this is an event. I don't know. This is the first one I've turned on that it feels like a happening. I'm not sure if you got the same feel from the intro here.
Absolutely. I felt everything was a little stepped up from the last couple episodes we've covered, and it felt more like a pro wrestling show. It wasn't so much of a, hey, we're going to do some wacky skits and stuff. It was really good.
So we have our hosts, Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura, and we get right off to the races here. Mean Gene rudely interrupts Mr. T's workout session and wants to get an interview with him. So all Mr. T has to say is he's going to smash that chump, and then we get the intro right in. And all of a sudden, Bob Orton is battling Bob, and he's a boxer. So on a recent Piper's Pit, he puts out an open challenge to anybody who has ever wrestled in the WWF. Hogan comes out, but only to answer the challenge for his buddy, Mr. T. And they show the vignettes of Mr. T training, knocking out his training opponent. They finish with Mr. T getting interviewed in the locker room before the match. And Mean Gene is not letting him really finish his thoughts. Thoughts on this segment here, and this was sort of the plan always for Mr. T to look like this badass, and I thought they did a good job, especially kind of pairs what we were talking about in the happy hour where Bob Orton's blown up, but I think that's purposeful.
Yeah, no, it you know, like you said, you could see, like, I think he was making him trying to look good. I loved Mean Gene trying to get his shit in constantly. Like, I've seen you in Rocky 3. Man, Rocky 3 was a movie. This is real life. Like, Mr. T's hitting on all the right buttons and stuff. And weird to see a boxing match being prepped, but very, very well done build-up, I think.
So we also have the opening of this match, Mr. T taking on Cowboy Bob Orton with Roddy Piper in his corner. And they were setting this up like this was going to be a full, all right, let's go all, 10 rounds, boxing in the ring. But pro wrestling boxing matches, as we know, don't go as planned, as we'll see at WrestleMania 2. And this is the build up, by the way, Roddy Piper versus Mr. T with the boxing gloves on. Whatever your choice is on, if you believe that was the right way to use Mr. T or Roddy Piper in a match, whatever. But Bob Orton attacks him before the bell. And Mr. T no-sells what he's doing, and they go face-to-face. And they go kind of to war here. They're throwing in some of these punches that are actually pretty stiff. And I was wondering how maybe Vince Russo was watching this for Brawl for All. Like, why don't we just actually do this, bro? Like, we'll actually have them beat the shit out of each other. It's hard to fake boxing, so I'm sure that some of these stiff shots to the solar plexus or the face are legit here, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have to be. It's boxing. I mean, the gloves might be a little soft, but the punches are still going to fuck you up. So you got to know that shit hurts.
All right, so we also had a spot in this match where they're following the rules of the boxing match, and we get a thumb to the eye, which is interesting because he's wearing boxing gloves. I think maybe he put his thumb through the glove and got him in the eye. And any sort of cheating that happens here is par for the course. We want the heels to get over and make people upset. And I think that really worked with the crowd. They wanted to see them get in the ring, and they were upset for Mr. T to not have any of the, the one-upmanship that he deserved. People thought he had Bob Orton beat. And eventually he does get the win because it winds up being a DQ. So T decks Orton with the left hook, sends him over the top and out to the floor for what they're calling a count-out victory. But the referee gets hit too, so it's confusion. I took it as a DQ finish, but I guess it was a count-out.
It's a little bit of A, a little bit of B. It's some WWF shit going on right there.
So it goes 4 minutes and 30 seconds. After the match, they kind of go with double team beatdown on T, and then obviously setting the stage for Mr. T versus Piper, WrestleMania 2, Nassau Coliseum, the boxing match. What are your thoughts? I mean, if they're going to set up a boxing match, I mean, there was some steam to this. So as I'm watching this and seeing boxing, all I kept thinking is like, why are we watching boxing and a wrestling? And I'm sure a lot of people watching at the time thought that.
Yeah.
But I thought they did a good job of building it up because I was pissed off at Bob Orton, like watching this. He was pissing me off because he was dodging and weaving and cheating every step of the way because he was blown up. So
Yeah, I think it's a Vince McMahon thing. I think it's about bringing a different spectacle into his own bubble. Boxing, obviously hot as hell. You got Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, all this shit going on. So why not try to incorporate it into your own business? You already got the ring. You just got to get some shorts and some gloves and throw two people out there that look tough as nails. And I think it was a nice, refreshing concept, especially when done right. Brawl for All, obviously not the best example, but this was a better sway into the right direction for it.
So King Kong Bundy is wanting Hogan and makes it clear that whoever stands in his way is going to get the beatdown of a lifetime. And we see the poor soul Steve Gator Wolf have to step in the ring with King Kong Bundy with Bobby Heenan in his corner. And we know Gator Wolf, he's nothing more than just an enhancement talent. And pretty quick, man, Atlantic City Avalanche, and it's over. They do 40 seconds because of all the walking around that Bundy does, and he's kind of taunting. But Steve Gator Wolf stood no chance. And I was listening to someone talk about just enhancement matches, and we've seen a lot of them on this show, just talking about enhancement matches. Do you think this has a play? I mean, I have my own thoughts, and I'll let you go with it first. What are your thoughts on something like this being on a premiere show?
I mean, you got to make Bundy look like a giant, right? No matter what, it's that kind of mentality. It's your typical squash match with a really, really big dude, right? And that's what it felt like to me. It felt like something we would have seen in WCW when the Giant's out there, and like, here's JL in the ring with the Giant. You're not getting a match more than a minute. So it had that same kind of vibe to me.
Yeah, for the function of it, I understand that there's not a lot of weekly TV in between this. There's months between the builds. So you want King Kong Bundy to look as strong as possible, and having a 50-50 match doesn't accomplish that. In the same breath, though, like if you're paying a ticket to watch this, it's got to be frustrating because you want to see a guy like King Kong Bundy be challenged. So it's twofold. I guess a big piece is you have to build someone up to look strong enough to be able to have a meaning, to be at WrestleMania 2 in a cage against Hogan. He needs to stack up these wins, and you don't want to be squashing your main roster. Yeah. So Steve Gatorwolf is the poor recipient of these avalanches. And yeah, I understand what the function is, but it doesn't make it any less appealing for me because I think it's just a strategy of the bygone era. Like, I don't think it's something I want to see on our TV on a weekly basis. If we had that stuff on Dynamite, I don't think it would function. I just don't. There are times and places for squash matches. I just don't think it happens today. And if it does happen today, it better be progressing story in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, we'll use this past Collision as an example. The local jobber versus Powerhouse Hobbs, kind of trying to build up Hobbs a little bit more and make him seem like a menace because he hasn't really been so active on TV. So that's the right way to do it, I believe. And maybe it was the same case here. Steve Gatorwolf sounds like something that appeared in Jesse Ventura's dream when he was at ayahuasca. He's like, I met Steve Gatorwolf. He was on the streets. Okay, Monsoon. And so it's got its fun. I don't know.
So we have Mr. Fuji, who's not feeling well today, and he's with Don Muraco, and he wants to be with Muraco as he faces Hogan for the WWF Championship. Big moment for him. And Mr. Fuji said, all right, I'll get my good friend Bobby Heenan to assist as the man at ringside. And Heenan said, absolutely. I'll represent Muraco simply because he hates Hogan that much. So the Heenan-Hogan hate continues into WCW, which I love the consistency on Bobby Heenan's end. Even to the Bash of the Beach 1996. Yeah. But whose side is he on? Classic. And people hate that because he jumped on the call and like Barry. It fits Bobby Heenan. That's realistic. Anyway, I did like this, and they made it there was such a small group of managers. It was Jimmy Hart, it was Mr. Fuji, Bobby Heenan. You also had Freddie Blassie, Albano. It was a small group of guys that pretty much managed the whole roster. And if you were not a guy that didn't have as much charisma on the mic, they were like, all right, throw one of these guys with them. So they need to be at ringside to kind of hold them accountable.
Yeah, 100%.
So we go to Hulk Hogan taking on Magnificent Muraco with Bobby Heenan in his corner for the WWF Championship. I'll let you take the lead on this match, talk about it. I like these side plots as garbage as this match was, work rate was, as garbage as it was. I do like these side defenses for Hogan, the Terry Funks, the Muraccos, the Genius. I like these side title defenses because they're fun. Like, I think it's cool to see Don Muraco getting the title shot.
No, this match felt very like, I don't know. You don't see it it was like an open challenge type deal. You know what I mean? Like, you got that kind of, like, how often are you going to see a Terry Funk or a Lanny Poffo come on and fight Hogan or fight anybody for a world championship? Nonetheless, Terry Funk obviously more so, but I thought this was a fun kind of match. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great by any means, but it did the job. Hogan's being Hogan. Obviously, we get the DQ bullshit. It went pretty long too. With 7 minutes almost, and it was interesting. But I like to see I love the Bundy run in. I thought that was really good. Good storytelling mechanism, trying to get you to the next level. It was nothing. I'm not gonna rate it a 5-star match, but it was okay. It did the job.
Exactly. And the match itself was, as I mentioned, not great, but the story after the match is what really kind of drives the content for the next couple of weeks. And really seeing Hogan be exposed this way, where he gets the win for Heenan breaks up the pin, DQ, the ref calls for the bell. Okay, everyone's pissed, they're booing, but they even get a little bit nervous now because Buddy runs down, walks down. He walks down. Avalanches Hogan, not once, not twice, 3 times, I think 4. And then Muraco holds him in the corner, and the fans are audibly gasping. Even though this doesn't have the impact that you probably would want from him, he's still a big dude. Looks like Uncle Fester. One of those Halloween front lawn things where you that blows up. It's King Kong Bundy, dude. And hitting Hogan with it, and he gets several more splashes to the abs and to his back, and we see to the point where a hushed silence comes over the Phoenix, Arizona crowd, where he stretched it out into a local medical facility, but did notice they did say hospital, so.
Yeah, but I mean, as little you're seeing these Saturday night main events, say this is the only way you get your wrestling, seeing Hogan get thrown on a stretcher, leaving you hanging for that long period of time, it's got to be devastating as a fan. You're like, oh my God, this is the guy I'm rooting for, and he's in the hospital. Like, where do we send him a card? How do we get him flowers? It's very pressing for the fandom.
One of my favorite Hogan feuds is with Earthquake, and they do this, and they do the get well soon Hogan stuff on the build to SummerSlam. I love that, and this was part of this. And I get, for Hogan to be this superhuman guy and go into WrestleMania, you wanted to believe he could lose, and I think no one really thought at the time, especially as they were building towards bigger and better things, that they're going to put the title on King Kong Bundy. Hogan was that cowbell. He wanted to be carrying the torch all the way up the mountain.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's hurt going into a cage match, there's a chance. Like, I think that this was a good way of booking it. And they use this formula over and over again. Hogan winds up being hurt, and nobody understands, can he overcome the odds? It becomes Hogan's thing. And he does overcome the odds. But this was really awesome for King Kong Bundy, who we saw just the first couple episodes not really having a direction. For him to be inserted as this main top heel kind of works. And I think if he formulated a little bit better, and maybe he could have been a bigger deal than he was. I thought this was good. And seeing Hogan take it away, that people are remembering this. This is what sticks in their brain about this episode. If you ask someone about this episode, they don't remember the match with Muraco. They probably remember this. If you ask Tom about it, because he was watching it, he probably remembers this, but not as much what match preceded it.
Oh, I bet you he'll still be able to tell you all about Don Muraco and Hulk Hogan. It was my favorite match. I promise you.
The original Rock, right? Don Muraco was the Rock, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we have the Dream Team, Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine with Johnny Valiant in the corner, taking on the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, and the Dynamite Kid with the torn right knee and ligament and all. Captain Albano in his corner for the Tag Team Championship. So we have the Dream Team of Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine using We Are the Champions as their theme music, obviously dubbed out on Peacock. Not able to see it, but according to all counts, Queen wasn't charging rights. I don't know how it worked on TV at the time, but they were using the rights for We Are the Champions. And so the way this worked out, the Bulldogs won a non-title match to earn themselves an actual shot at the belts, and they kind of show the highlights, and the announcers make it clear that this match is for the titles because they earned it. And Davey Boy Smith and Valentine get into a shoving contest starting the match. And if you're watching this and seeing Dynamite, knowing how hurt he is, the guy still finds a way to put on a very solid match in a time where work rate was destitute. This guy is just a hidden gem where if you're not familiar with Dynamite Kid's work, man, he is unbelievable, guys. And, seeing him, they could hide him in a tag match because he's hurt, but he still went out there and did his shit. So I was a big fan of this match. Was it the best match? Absolutely not. But I would say for this time, this era, this could be a match of the year as far as work rate goes.
Yeah, no, this is like FTR type shit. Like, this was really fun. Really enjoyed it. I haven't really watched too much of the British Bulldogs, to be honest. And so this was a nice, obviously Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog. I've seen many, many matches, but seeing him paired with Dynamite Kid, it's not something that's been really, really ran through for me. So this was cool to watch. Very, very fun. This might be one of the best Greg the Hammer Valentine matches I've ever seen too.
Yeah.
I was thoroughly impressed. You know how much I'm not a beefcake guy, so I could care less about them, but I really, really enjoyed it, man. I thought for this being on a Saturday night's main event, this was good wrestling.
So the ending of the match saw a pretty fast pace for the era in 1986. We get Dynamite kicking off a figure four attempt, sending Valentine headfirst into the corner. Greg Valentine gets up, gets tossed to the mat, and Dynamite goes on top, nails him with the front missile drop kick. Thought it was going to be over the fence. Thought it was going to be a 3 count. Valentine's foot goes up on the bottom rope. Doesn't stop there, though. Clothesline by Dynamite gets another 2 count, and Beefcake gets dumped as Valentine and Dynamite hit in the ring with Valentine falling on top for a lucky 3 count. So the fans kind of gasp at the match. We know that this match this feud's not over. We're going to get more involved here. 9 minutes and 27 seconds. Like I said, this match for the time period, immerse yourself in 1986 and understand the rest of the card. We just watched King Kong Bundy and Steve Gator Wolf, Hulk Hogan and Don Muraco put on a travesty of a work rate match. The fact that they had this match here on the card, definitely this was the best match as far as quality goes on any of the shows we've covered thus far.
Absolutely.
On Saturday night's main event. Akin to, as you referenced, a match that like FTR would put on, this type of match. And if you gave this 5 to 10 more minutes, this could have been an all-time classic. And just, and then obviously if I'm structuring, I would probably pick out Beefcake, let Valentine do most of the heavy lifting. But that being said, it was a very good match.
No, it was really. I was super impressed to see this on a Saturday night's main event. This is something that would be on a deep cut DVD of the WWF of the past. So this was good, man.
So we have Mean Gene outside the emergency unit at the hospital to get some info on Hulk's condition. So we're gonna, fans waiting with bated breath, and Hulk Hogan's in bad shape from these avalanches. So can he even compete at WrestleMania in a few weeks? We don't know.
Stay tuned, brother.
So we get to witness as Hulk Hogan's recovering in a hospital bed, Rick Derringer's Real American Music video, the debut. So if you've ever seen the clip of Hulk Hogan playing the guitar, wearing the red, white, and blue, and just kind of dancing around, it's from this music video. It's supposed to be serious, but taking tongue in cheek that it's funny makes it better. But if you go from the attempt that he's supposed to look like he's being serious and this was supposed to be like a tough guy doing stuff, song rules though. The song, the Real American, is absolutely classic. It's not as good as the Real Australian that Nick Storm made, but it's close.
Oh well, it's an anthem of our fandom. You could throw that song on anywhere and somebody heard it. Fun fact: I met Hogan after a SmackDown one time in Chicago, and some dude came driving by blast, and Hogan's like, "Shut that shit off, brother." He's like, "I don't want to hear that." I was cracking up. I was like, "Oh, it's a Real American. Come on."
Dude, fun fact for me, I'll give you a nice insight into being just indoctrinated into pro wrestling. So Real American, obviously you grow up, it's Hogan's theme, but when I started watching wrestling, Hogan was already in WCW, so he had the version that Jimmy Hart made, whatever that theme was. And the only time I knew the theme was when Patterson and Briscoe used the Real American coming out on the Attitude Era. So for the longest time, to me, that was them coming out, obviously making fun of Hogan and using Rick Derringer's theme during the Monday Night Wars. But it's just funny to think about a theme song like that where it took a bit. Because my Hogan for WWE was Voodoo Child, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
That was the early 2000s version of it. After the NWO kind of flopped in 2002, he came back and got another renaissance run with the title. But yeah, me coming into wrestling 1996, 97, Hogan was already on WCW side, so I didn't get to experience the Rick Derringer Hogan stuff. But my experience was like, I guess they made a theme for the Briscoe Body Shop, brother.
Yeah. I love it, man. Absolutely love it.
So our main event here, the young Junkyard Dog taking on Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart. And this is an interesting match. Adrian Adonis certainly is an interesting flair for 1986. Adonis is feuded with JYD by default to continue the Funk JYD feud into WrestleMania because it's Jimmy Hart's guys. So they were just kind of making it clear that Jimmy Hart's faction of guys are going to hold up for each other. And Adrian is full-blown adorable mode here. He's a good worker, but the commentary team makes it clear that he's an outlier on the roster. He's eccentric, all that stuff, but he can go. And watching him here, and I think he was held up by the fact that Junkyard Dog was kind of limited in 1986 and not able to keep up with him. And also Adonis's body type too. Like he seems, if you watch some of the older tapes, he's more in shape. He's always was a bigger guy.
Yeah.
But here it just seems like he kind of let a little himself go a little bit. And this was just a silly match. I mean, with the 6 minutes and 35 seconds, there was very little stuff to be proud of as far as work rate goes. But if you're into the larger than life characters of Adonis and Junkyard Dog, I guess you could enjoy this. And then of course Jimmy Hart getting involved on the apron and all that with the megaphone. I guess there is some nostalgic pieces to it, but as far as structure of the card, this was certainly not the main event. This is not how I would have ended if this was traditionally in a card like this, but we know how Saturday Night's main event goes. A lot of people are sleeping by the time this takes air.
Yeah, so which is probably the proper place for it to be on the card if everybody's knocked out. But Adrian Adonis giving me mad Goldust vibes. You know,
Sure.
I got that feel for it. Not to the extreme that Goldust went to, but you could see that they're trying to slightly push the envelope a little bit, especially on NBC. It's a pretty bold move. My takeaway from it was like it was okay. And now that you said that this is like the sleeper match, it absolutely is in the sleeper place, and it felt like a sleeper match to me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much a good point. It's just the structure of the card. We have to remember this is airing late.
Yeah.
So people are watching. You want to stack the front of the card and middle of the card with your stuff you want everybody to see. And there wasn't a DVR thing. I guess you could have popped in a VCR, a tape in the VCR and taped this if you wanted to. But most people were just like, if they missed it, they missed it. They'd find out, or they wouldn't find out what had happened because they were a slave to the highlight reel. And maybe some people didn't even see this. So
100%.
To end the show, we get Mean Gene one last time, waiting for an update for the Hulkster. And we get one from Dr. Manovich, who says Hulk has, quote, sustained injuries to his lower back, ribs, and neck. So we are on the lookout. Can he compete in the cage against King Kong Bundy? We'll wait and see. They show one last replay of Piper T and Hogan Bundy incidents before they go to close. I got to say, I mean, highlight of this show obviously was the Bundy segment, and because for historical value.
Yeah.
And the great tag title defense. And this gets a thumbs up for me. I thought this was awesome. And then for historical reference too, you got to see Rick Derringer, Real American. This is where it debuted. This was not his theme yet. He was still coming out to Eye of the Tiger prior to this. So like it becomes his theme very, very soon.
It's crazy, man. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It was way above some of the stuff we've already covered. And I think this is building into a better direction for what Saturday Night Main Event will eventually get to when it hits when it's on when we're kids or we're growing up. So it's good shit.
So we go into our May 3rd, 1986, the Saturday Night's Main Event number 6, Providence, Rhode Island, from the Providence Civic Center. This was taped on May 1st, so a couple days removed from this in 1986. Our current champions, this is the fallout of WrestleMania 2. All of our champions are the same aside from the tag team champions. They are the British Bulldogs, went back on 4/7/1986. And we get a lot of the stuff. They're setting new stuff for, as we mentioned, for later on in the year. They want to set the stage for SummerSlam. But they also, SummerSlam doesn't exist yet, actually, because the first one's 88. So they're setting the stage for the summer months, and they also have setting the stage for WrestleMania 3, planting seeds for this tree that will grow, that they want to fill up the Pontiac Silverdome, which will be their biggest effort yet.
It's awesome, man.
So we have the host, Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan, and we're going to have Steamboat has to say, slay slimy snakes 10 times fast. So that's what they had said this in the beginning, and we get the new tag champs, the Bulldogs.
Snakes.
Will defend their belts for the first time on national TV against the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. And this was the first Saturday Night's Main Event that you can see here, I believe, like for 2 out of 3 falls, might be the first time we're seeing this on TV, right? Like I can't remember the last time that we've read about a 2 out of 3 falls match. And akin to the match we saw with FTR versus Bull Club Gold, which was an absolute instant classic.
Yeah, no, paving the way, man.
So we have Hulk Hogan and the Junkyard Dog teaming up to open the show with the Haiti Kid in their corner, taking on Terry Funk and Haas Funk with Jimmy Hart. So we know Haas Funk is Dory Funk Jr. in his corner, and the super team of Hulk Hogan and Junkyard Dog. Your thoughts on them working together? Because they are pretty much, I mean, they are enigmas as far as charisma goes, but this is a pairing that they probably imagined would be a super team when Junkyard Dog was brought in from the other days, from his past glory. Seeing Hogan and Junkyard Dog together is kind of probably surreal for some people.
Oh, imagine what it felt like at the time. I'm sure it was huge. It was interesting. It wasn't the hottest opener for me, but I'm not. I mean, you can't really have a bad match with Terry Funk or Dory Funk for that case. So I mean, it worked out really well. You got larger than life characters with Hogan and Junkyard. So I mean, having the Texas Southern wrestlers like Terry Funk and Dory in there, it kind of balanced itself out very well. And yeah, it wasn't nothing great. It was a fun, just like opener brawl kind of segment. It was good.
So we have Hulk Hogan kind of doing the moveset of Junkyard Dog to start the match. He's on his knees, headbutts the Funks out of the ring, and then JYD does some of Hogan's moves, slams them, and we have Haiti Kid, who is the little person with the mohawk, and the one that I think we saw that he was squashed by King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania, I believe.
Yeah.
So he's been involved here, and we see them try to do little people divisions and all that stuff. So Haiti Kid is one of those guys that been involved in stuff. So
yeah,
we'll do more of a deep dive in Haiti Kid one of these days. But this was more of those matches that, you know, it's a brawl, as you referenced, and we have a lot of the fast paced stuff. Hogan and Funk and Dory all have the ability to kind of keep up, and JYD just can't. As I'm watching this, it's JYD is slowing people down a little bit, and it's kind of a shame because of the fact that where JYD just was a few years prior. I don't know. I think they probably felt like they didn't get the full package of Junkyard Dog when they got him, because this dude was lighting New Orleans on fire as far as wrestling goes. Imagine what he could have been as that superstar, the equivalent of Hulk Hogan at the top of the card. It just wasn't to be, and I think they probably realized it somewhere around this point.
Yeah, and WWF isn't always booking people for their work rate. It's more about the over-the-top character, and I mean, they're getting their money's worth out of Junkyard Dog. Absolutely. Could he be doing better? Absolutely. But it's not to the point where it's hard to watch it. You know what I mean? You just kind of see him kind of taking it at his own pace.
So Haiti Kid gets involved in the match a whole bunch of time, but the ending see JYD runs in fist first in the corner. Terry tags in, the crowd chants JYD. Everyone's going crazy. We get a double knockout spot. And then Terry Funk cuts off the tag to Hulk Hogan, but he misses the splash from the top rope. We get a hot tag to Hogan, and before you can even blink, he pins Terry Funk with the leg drop. 10 minutes and 19 seconds, all told. And yeah, match was okay. Like you said, the star power at the top of the card, and seeing Terry Funk and Hogan mix it up had me thinking, especially, you know, let's see, 3 out of 4 weeks, he kind of linked up with Terry Funk, that being Hogan.
Yeah.
Would have been cool to see Terry Funk versus Hogan on a big stage like WrestleMania instead of seeing King Kong Bundy at 2.
If they would have took it down to Texas and they did a WrestleMania down there and they had, you know, Hogan versus Funk, it would have been probably one of the biggest matches at the time. I think that would have put asses in seats. I think it would have been good though.
But if you would have yeah, I agree. If you would have given them a lot more time, you know, the match they had was very entertaining. I very much enjoyed it. But they were crunched for time being on Saturday Night's Main Event. If you give them
100%.
the leeway to be like, all right, go 15 minutes in a cage, Terry
and,
Funk
and a
Hulk Hogan.
solid build up to it. Could you imagine Terry coming in as this dastardly heel? We know Terry could do that too.
Yeah.
I think it would have been amazing, and what a better way to make. I don't want Terry to win the title, for God's sakes. Like, you could, but I mean, Hogan getting over that, like the American made Hulk Hogan versus the rough and tough American Terry Funk. The story writes itself. It's a beautiful thing to imagine what could have been.
Yeah, what could have been, butterfly effect type of stuff. You would have put King Kong Bundy in the spot where Funk was a few weeks ago, challenging for the title, but just comes up short. And then instead of being Avalanche in the corner, he gets branded or like whatever. You put him in the hospital for like severe burn. Like, you could definitely build it up with the same archetype of a promo package with Terry Funk, but the work rate would have been that much better. But
100%.
We digress. We're just big Terry Funk fans here. RIP to one of the greatest of all time, Mount Rushmore type of wrestler. So his WWF career left a lot to be desired on my end. Like, you almost forgot it happened, but he really sowed his oats later on in his career, and he reinvented himself. Dude started doing the moonsault when he was 50+ years old. So anything is possible, as Kevin Garnett would say. But
long live Terry Funk.
long live Terry Funk. And now we reference the aforementioned King Kong Bundy. He takes on Uncle Elmer in his farewell match. You know, the pomp and circumstance, the retirement match for Uncle Elmer. No, I'm joking. Uncle Elmer gets squashed by King Kong Bundy here. Pretty much just an absolute, squash match, but a little bit more because Uncle Elmer's a big dude.
Yeah.
And we get young Tim White refereeing the match, which is what I wrote in my notes.
Little Timmy.
And Elmer no-sells Bundy shoulder blocks, and after that we get the avalanche. This was an absolute dog shit match. Just absolutely horrendous. And as we referenced in the newsletter, Uncle Elmer was released from his contract shortly after this. So bad that he was get him out.
Yeah. It was big meaty men slapping meaty men in the late 80s.
I don't even know if it was that, dude. I mean, they were big. They were meaty.
It could have been better, but I don't think that Vince was ready to make their big guys look like that. This is no Powerhouse Hobbs versus Miro.
I love that match.
It was
Miro and Hobbs was so goddamn good.
I'm so glad that they got a space to showcase themselves, because I miss Miro on TV. I miss Hobbs on TV. I thought it was the perfect thing. But enough about good wrestling. Let's talk about the
yeah, dude, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Next, moving on, as Hawk would say.
Moving on.
All right, so we got Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart taking on Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful. And this is what he was doing before he got involved in this feud with Hogan prior. So he's fighting Adrian Adonis, has an issue with Adrian Adonis's lifestyle, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
And it was really, and it's interesting because it's a sign of the times for sure. And you hear the commentary by Vince McMahon about Adonis's presentation, and he does put him over for saying that he's able to work, and this is just the way he expresses himself. Kudos to Bobby Heenan, though, and the funny part is they're trying to make him a heel, but he is the one that's being the most inclusive, just being like, who cares what he wears? If it's a dress or it's not, can the guy wrestle?
Yeah.
This was, a pretty long match for pretty much nothing was accomplished. Seeing the attitude from Paul Orndorff is pretty much what I pulled away from this. And also Adrian Adonis could have been a little bit better as far as presentation wise. And I think if they would have put more steam on it, like the Goldust character, not turned up to 11, they weren't ready for that.
Yeah.
But have a little bit more meat on the bone as far as story going, not just presenting him as this like different guy that they're not saying the quiet part out loud. They just wanted to present him and have people boo him because he dressed differently. I just think they could have been better.
And talk about weird things that you're shocked that survived the Peacock network. Footage being removed. Like, this shit would not fly nowadays.
Especially the commentary. Like, listening to the commentary where,
100%.
Again, they're trying to make Heenan sound like he's the heel, but he's the one being the most accepting, which is...
Talk about reading the fucking room, right? Like Bobby Heenan's like, it's calm down, Vin. It's like it's weird, and it was almost a little hard to watch, like especially with the commentary was very uncomfortable, and it doesn't flow. This did not age well at all.
No, it definitely doesn't, and it's similar to the Bad News Brown Piper thing. Maybe some things are better left in the past or whatever, but
yeah.
Adrian Adonis is a heel because of his lifestyle. That's what they're trying to do here. And I think as time goes on, we'll see that continue. They use the genius in the same way, where the genius is poetic and well-spoken, but he's also very flamboyant.
Yeah.
And that makes him a heel, and Hogan can't stand that, and Hogan's mocking him. And it just shows the sign of the culture that if you would have presented him as a babyface, because he'd be a babyface today, like, all the characters we see that are flamboyant and eccentric and being who they are, a genuine nature, that is a babyface act, but Adrian Adonis being presented as a heel, it just, to me, Adonis came off as the heel. It's interesting because Orndorff is supposed to be this white-hot babyface. We won't see him turn back heel until July.
Yeah.
But he is a babyface here, trying to rid the world of stuff that he doesn't agree with. And I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was definitely a weird segment. And the match sucked, so it wasn't like you're missing anything if you skip over it.
100%.
We get this interview with Hulk Hogan in an empty arena. And Gene brings up the King Kong Bundy ambush from Saturday Night's Main Event. This was a cool segment, seeing in the empty arena, because especially they went from the live crowd and panned to the empty arena where they're sitting in the stands. And they want Gene wants his thoughts on this match with King Kong Bundy coming up. And We get the standard Hulk Hogan promo, but this was cool. I liked sitting in an empty arena. This isn't done enough. I really much enjoy this.
No, it really, absolutely. It had a nice aesthetic, especially for what we were used to in Saturday Night main events in the 1990 or 1980s. It's cool. It was different, typical Hogan, obviously. But brother, you need to know what's going to happen with me and King Kong Bundy. It's almost they built him as the underdog, getting hurt, and like, is he going to be able to do it? And it works out so well. No, who doesn't love a Mean Gene and Hogan interview?
Yeah, I thought this was good, and we saw him wearing the red and yellow, and he cut him in promo, and they zoom in close on his face, and the relationship between Mean Gene and the chemistry with him and Hogan, it's eventually transferred over to WCW. Like they're very much akin to each other, and the presentation of being in an empty arena, I really much thought this was good, and it kind of made it feel like a big match feel like he's really in his thoughts, reminiscing about what could be if he loses to King Kong.
Yeah.
We get Jake Roberts and Ricky Steamboat, and this is Jake's biggest test to date. Right now, he's undefeated. They make it clear on commentary, but before the match even gets started, Roberts clothesline Steamboat off the apron. He DDTs him on the concrete, knocking him out. This is when the DDT was
beautiful,
perfected, and it was just protected.
It looked great. Yeah.
And after that, Steamboat gets pulled in the ring, given the Damien treatment. They put the snake all over him, and this is going to be kicked off in a big way in WWF. For a great big feud for both these dudes. Very talented guys. As you referenced, we saw Ricky Steamboat last night at All Out.
It's just smiles, man.
As of recording time. Jake Roberts as well. I mean, involved in AEW. He looks like he's in better health at the corner of being with Lance Archer.
He was walking around StarCast, and I've met him for the first time in like 2012 when he was not doing too well, had the oxygen machine and all that stuff on him. This guy was standing straighter than I've ever seen him. He was walking beautifully, fresh breath of air. It's the longevity of Jake Roberts is probably one of the most impressive things I've seen in pro wrestling. He looks like $1 million right now. He looks great. So happy to see. And same thing with Ricky Steamboat, man. Unbelievable. Still chopping motherfuckers as he does. It was beautiful, man.
So good, and this is setting the stage and shooting angles, if you will, getting them to build towards something bigger, not giving away the Jake Roberts, Ricky Steamboat payoff on a Saturday Night's main event. And the DDT on concrete was a big deal. It was unheard of at the time. So Ricky Steamboat overcoming that is going to be a big deal. And Jake Roberts at this point, as we referenced, is undefeated. He won't stay undefeated, but he is a really big deal and a really big man. That's the other thing I pulled away from this roster. If you see Jake Roberts in person, he's enormous, but he just felt like another guy on the WWF roster. And then with Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn was always this normal sized guy that was just, but Billy Gunn is.
And then you meet him, you're like, holy fuck, man.
So we go to our main event here. It's the British Bulldogs taking on Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik in a 2 out of 3 falls match for the WWF Tag Team Championship. So Captain Lou Albano in the corner of the champs, and we also have Classy Freddie Blassie in the corner of Volkov and Sheik. So 2 out of 3 falls. We know that these 2 or 3 falls matches can go long. We saw them go an hour in 2023 Collision, FTR versus Bull Club Gold. Would they go 59 minutes and 20 seconds, something like that, close to the time limit? But this is pretty quick, and I like the mindset here where you have a quick Davey Boy Smith tap out to the camel clutch to save his body, where a minute 30 in, he taps out. And that's the logic sometimes in these Iron Man matches or 2 out of 3 falls. But it was bold here because you gave up the fall pretty quickly, and now you're in sort of sudden death. If you lose one more time, it's over.
Yeah.
For structure of this match, to me, like I was expecting more because of maybe what we saw the week prior.
Yeah.
But I thought this was a better showing from Davey Boy and Dynamite Kid as a collective, but the opponent side left a lot to be desired because you weren't dealing with having a guy like Sheik who is kind of removed from his prime of his career. He's still on the downward slope a little bit.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you. It was still fun watch though. Like I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Like you said, I love the tap out right away. Like they built a good momentum to it, and then you go to 1-1. It was your typical 2 out of 3 falls match done well. I like when it gets into that. We got 1 fall left. Let's get into it. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Sheik Volkov not really doing too much for me, man.
Yeah.
They never really have. And I mean, I don't like to speak ill will of Sheiky baby, but it's just not my cup of tea. But it was still a fun match, man.
So a cool spot here was Nikolai Volkov slammed Davey Boy near the ropes. He covers him. He thinks he got the 3. They turn around. He's going to celebrate that they won the 2 falls pretty quickly in 5 minutes. And he turns around into being rolled up by Davey Boy Smith for a quick 3 count. He's shocked. We're 1-1 right now. And as we know, we have Davey Boy doing a lot of the heavy lifting as far as wrestling goes because Dynamite his knee is barking big time and he's not able to go. And they want to make sure that he is able to continue. But we saw, I mean, he wrestled WrestleMania. He worked through this injured knee. And right now we're kind of looking at a guy who can't keep up with the pace. He probably should have just taken time off, but having the belt on him probably meant a lot to him that he didn't want to give it up.
Yeah.
But we see a lot more of this match go back and forth. That 3rd and final fall needs to be established. And we see some cool spots. We get the camel clutch on Dynamite Kid. Dynamite Kid in this submission. He's screaming for help. Davey Boy draws Volkov in, breaks up the clutch. He switches with Dynamite Kid, which is interesting because we see this all the time. We saw it with 2 twin. The Bellas used to do it.
Yeah.
We had the Bashams used to do it. Demolition would do it. It's a tactic that, first of all, heels do. And second of all, they need to be wearing the same tights. And these guys are wearing 2 different color tights. I understand the chaos and the sweat and the testosterone in the match. You're like, I have no idea what's going on. I guess you give him a pass here. But Dynamite cradles Sheik for a 1-2-3. 9 minutes and 8 seconds. The Bulldogs go over with the 2-1 victory. And 80s type of booking, Sheik and Volkov were feeling themselves a bit here, but I don't know. Your thoughts on the finish, because it was quite clear that Dynamite and Bulldog are 2 completely different guys, especially if they're not even wearing the same tights. They usually do, but they're not tonight.
Yeah, it could. I mean, they could have went around it by saying, "Oh, that's not the legal man." You know what I mean? Like it was a switcheroo that paid off badly because they were not wearing the same color tights. But if it was more painted in the picture of like, oh, the ref forgot who was the legal man, that would have been more explainable. But I didn't hate it. I thought it was good, and we got to really think that it's still 1986 here. Things are not what we're used to with pro wrestling, so a lot could get slid under the ring.
Yeah, of course. And I think people were excited to see it because the Bulldogs did go over, and they had to do smoke and mirrors because Dynamite Kid was hurt.
Yeah.
Figure out a way to hide this, and match didn't go long. 9 minutes and 10 seconds. We've seen matches on this exact card go longer than that. 2 out of 3 falls. They did it pretty quick. And of course, that first fall, as we mentioned, was a minute in. And the second fall was about 6 minutes in. And then they finally had the third fall, the decisive one, 9 minutes in. So it was a quick 2 out of 3 falls match. I think if you give these guys more time, they could have been certainly more. And if Dynamite Kid was healthy, that's the other thing that we got to remember. The Dynamite Kid was certainly in no shape to be wrestling. So we get kind of the better version of him when he took on the Dream Team for the tag titles. But once they have the titles, he is worse for wear. It seems like they probably shouldn't even put them on them and let Dynamite Kid go and heel because he just clearly shouldn't be in the ring.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's give our final thoughts on this episode, and then we're going to get into the chaser and preview what our favorite parts were. So thoughts on this episode as far as the WrestleMania rematch between the Bulldogs and the Dream Team probably should have happened here instead.
Yeah.
Wonder why they didn't. I know it's 2 months removed. Who knows about the bookings, and who knows, maybe someone wasn't available.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on this, on the fallout of WrestleMania? Did it do enough for you to kind of set the stage to want to see what's happening next in WWF?
You know what? It's hard to put that into place, seeing as like we're not in the moment, right? You know what I mean? I thought it was good. It wasn't the best WWF show I've seen, and not even the best Saturday Night's Main Event that we've seen, but I think it's still showing the evolution of what Saturday Night Main Event is going to be, and they are building up to the next couple months here. So I thought story-wise it was good. There was some great stuff like the empty arena, interview with Mean Gene and Hogan, and I think they're still working on the storytelling. Uncle Elmer's done. I'm okay with this. So again, good stuff. Not the best. I loved the Jake and Steamboat shit, like that was good, and especially like so recent where they're still both in our lives. Where it's awesome to go back and watch shit like that. So overall, I'd give it like a B minus. It wasn't nothing fantastic, maybe even C plus.
Well, that being said, let's get to the Chaser. Pick our favorite parts of the two events that we had to review today in the Chaser.
The Chaser.
Yeah, brother.
All right, here we are in the Chaser. Belcaster, we had a lot of wrestling to talk about, stuff in the newsletter. What was your favorite part of this episode to kind of dissect and go through?
It's definitely Steve Gator Wolf. It definitely was not just seeing Steamboat and stuff like that, but I really enjoyed Beefcake Valentine versus British Bulldogs. Obviously, Hogan King Kong Bundy stuff was great, but I'm giving my award of the week to the British Bulldogs because it was very refreshing to see some work rate wrestling on Saturday night's main event, and I hope it continues.
So, yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I have to say I have to give it to the British Bulldogs. They go in as challengers. They're hurting. They're working through pain, mostly Davey Boy Smith and I mean, Dynamite Kid working through the pain of the knee injury. And I'm sure Davey Boy's in pain himself for working the majority of most of the matches throughout that month, the build up to win the titles at WrestleMania. And then after the fact. And the other interesting part about as we're sitting here in the DeLorean is where we are segmented in the cards and understand the parameters of we jump forward 3 months. And I think so much has changed as far as landscape, but we have the ability to kind of go through the newsletter and see how much time has passed and how much growth is happening on World Wrestling Federation side, and seeing some of these characters come to life in front of it happens pretty quickly. What was this Hogan wearing blue and white tights turns into the Hulkamania we know just almost seemingly overnight. And I understand it's been a year and a half because it's just super quick where we're at the end of 1986 starting next week. But that's part of the allure here of doing the season because they don't have weekly TV. It's not small growth. It's big jumps in time. But I have to say, I appreciate the work rate as far as my Chaser goes. I appreciate the work rate, seeing it on our card. It is a big change of pace because we're not used to seeing it. We're so used to these slog down big matches that just have no pace to it. This was a lot of fun to see the British Bulldogs going out there. And I think the Dream Team match was certainly better. But Volkov and Sheik, even though they're not as nimble as they probably were 10 years prior to this, they still went out there and kind of, they were feeling themselves, as we said. And I thought this match didn't disappoint either. So I thought the first Saturday Night's main event was better than the second, but they both were definitely watchable. They're better than the first two we reviewed.
100%. I couldn't agree more with everything. Like that, you summed it up perfectly.
So let's close the tab, give our final wrap up preview next week, and we'll do some shilling for the Tavern, talk about what's going on at the Turnbuckle Tavern. Let's close the tab.
Closing the tab.
All right, as we close the tab here, the lights are coming on in the bar, and we are getting ready for another week here at the Tavern. But first, let's preview what's coming up next on Shot Nostalgia. Next week's show will be episode 4 of season 5, airing on September 15th, 2023. We're going to be going through Saturday night's main event 7, airing on October 4th, 1986, from Richfield, Ohio, headlined by WWF World Champion Hulk Hogan versus Paul Orndorff with Bobby Heenan in his corner. As I mentioned, Orndorff is going to be fresh off that heel turn. And, of course, we're going to do the second episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, the 8th edition, November 29th, 1986, from Los Angeles, California, headlined by WWF Intercontinental Champion Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth versus Jake Roberts with Damien the Snake. And we're also going to get, don't forget, WWF Champion Hulk Hogan defending his championship against Hercules Hernandez with Bobby Heenan in his corner. So the first episode is interesting because they film it a full month prior.
Yeah.
So it's airing in October, but it is filmed mid-September. Ballsy move, and I understand, like, it's not the internet, you can't find the spoilers or anything, but it's so much can change over time and all that. But I'm curious about going through this, and as we approach, we're going to have some episodes that are segmented between 2 years. We had our feet in 2 years last episode, 85 and 86. We're eventually going to be in 87, 88, and all of a sudden we're going to be in 89. We're going to be blowing through these years, and as I mentioned, this season is not the longest one we've done, but it certainly is long enough to stretch out the content, and we're in episode 4 coming up next week of 18.
Yeah.
So, do some further shilling about what's going on, Fig Night stuff that's going on your end.
Absolutely, man. We're running wild all over the place. Obviously, if you guys were walking around StarCast by chance, you see me hanging out around the action figures like I'm always doing every time there's an AEW event because it's my favorite thing to do. But yeah, Fig Night's going to be awesome. We're going to go. We went over because this is post, but we're going over the all the reveals from StarCast weekend. I mean, we had some really cool stuff. They went in depth on the Ring of Honor line, and then they also were talking about some of the exclusives coming out from the Jazzwares Vault, which is going to be like their direct to consumer line, which I'm super pumped for. They had, I don't know if you've seen the images floating around, but the Death Triangle or I think it was a Death Triangle or House of Black, but it goes into a triangle. It's Death Triangle.
I did not see that. I gotta check it out.
It's
for
super
sure.
beautiful.
I saw the Acclaim stuff that dropped this week. I saw the Danielson
How awesome!
figure.
Did you see that video with them?
So
fucking so great, dude. But yeah, I'm such a we're going to be talking about that and all of our love for what we just seen. There was a lot of good stuff, and AEW is killing it in the action figure game right now, and I couldn't be happier. I just got an Owen Hart chase. I found at Walmart the other day, so it's pretty cool. That's it's awesome to see Owen Hart on the shelves, but when you see those little red stickers and having a chase figure like that is so prestigious of Owen Hart's career, it's mind blowing for me still.
Did your heart skip a beat when you saw it in the aisle when you walked through?
Yeah, oh yeah. It's surreal, you know what I mean? And especially that it's an Owen Hart figure. Like I've never thought, 5 years ago I wouldn't have thought I'd have a chance to be buying Owen Hart figures, let alone finding chase variants of it. Is fucking wild.
I'm certainly not a completist in any fashion of any of the figures, but I've been really into the new Superstars line, like the Monster that came out, and
yes,
the Mr. T one, and also the Rock, the newer Rock that just came out. Those are awesome. I just like the feel of those figures. That the in between sort of obviously. I think they're more of the AWA figures because they're like the He-Man figure, but mixed with the AWA. Remco, is that the AWA?
Yeah, absolutely. The Remco
Look at me
line,
go.
yeah.
I have some figure talk going on. We have, some great stuff coming on the Tavern. Stay tuned as we're referencing. We're not going to reveal the details, but there's some big stuff on the horizon for 2024, and we'll leave it there. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to be giving you guys the content you want and deserve with all the wrestling content from 6 days a week, all over the place. TheTurnbuckleTavern.com for everything on there. Make sure you guys follow us on social media. Check us out on Instagram. And check out the shows. Whether you consume the shows on audio or video or whatever, make sure you guys are just supporting us in any way you can. Buy a shirt. I know it's Labor Day weekend last week, but maybe they're coming up with another deal coming soon. Make sure you guys purchase shirts on the Tavern. We got to have real glass at the Tavern, like that's got to be a shirt.
Only real glass at the Tavern. I love it.
That's very important. But also, again, thank you guys for consuming Wrestling Tonight, and also Brace for Impact, and shout out to the Raw Down and AEW Wrap Show last week, the flagship. Fig Night's always crushing it. There's so much good content here, and there's something for everybody. And just keep in mind, guys, wrestling's in the best place it's ever been. We're just 2 weeks removed from 81,000 people being in the building at Wembley. So
still get goosebumps when you're talking about it.
You see the negativity spewing online. Maybe take a tech detox from social media if it's bothering you so much. For real,
it helps.
Stop reading the stuff and just enjoy the product for what it is. Because, like I said, wrestling is in a renaissance right now, and I'm enjoying it. Even going back and watching this older stuff, and I'm reading through these newsletters. They're talking about some of the promotions that are doing shows, and Dave Meltzer is talking about how great it is. This person did 17,000 fans, and this promoter is being heralded as a hero for bringing 17,000 fans in a building. Just think about what 81,000 people means for a wrestling show. So run it back and see if they can get close to it.
Fandom inflation is a real thing. Fandom inflation is a real thing there, ACEFIELD Retro. Let me tell you something.
Well, also, as we're airing this next weekend, it's going to be Own the Night Remarkable Wrestling. So make sure you guys are in town. If you are a professional wrestler looking to learn from the best, there's going to be a training seminar with Motor City Machine Guns. Go to remarkablewrestling.com to check that out. And at the very least, stay tuned to our socials. And also, while I'm on here, might as well announce it here. I'll be back at Rad Pro Wrestling on 10/21 for Power Transfer. I'll also be there in December for Rad Pro Forever, Rad Forever, I believe the show is called, and
love it.
Early December. And as we say goodbye to 1994 there, we're going to be moving into 1995.
Woo.
So a lot of good stuff happening in the ACEFIELD Retro stuff, Turnbuckle Tavern, Mike Belcaster, everybody's eating. So we're gonna
Amazing.
it's all good stuff. But we appreciate you guys watching. Jesse Ventura is going to lead us out.
My friends, if you are not hanging out powering all your Teslas, I seen some street lights that had wolves' eyes staring into my soul. Let me tell you something. It was amazing there, ACEFIELD Retro. But my God, make sure you come back next week, every Friday night for a shot of nostalgia. Saturday night main event, brother.